Welcome to Hannity, and this is a Fox News alert. The IRS scandal continues to inch closer to the White House as there are new calls for a special prosecutor to be named in this case. And in Iraq, violence continues to escalate, and a senior intelligence official is telling Fox News tonight that ISIS has, quote, aspiration and intent to target U.S. interests. In a moment, Vice President Dick Cheney will join us in studio for a rare interview. And then later, former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin is here live to react to the growing scandals and tonight's election results. But first, 8 states held different contests today. All eyes were focused on 2 of the biggest races taking place in Oklahoma and Mississippi. And for the very latest, we turn to Fox's own Brett Baer. He's standing by tonight in Washington. Any call yet, Brett?
Hey, Sean, on the big one, not yet. First to Mississippi. This is really where the barn burner is. 6-term incumbent Thad Cochran trying to fight off Tea Party challenger Chris McDaniel. Take a look at these boards, how close it is. Senator Cochran has 50.7% of the vote, 79% of the precincts reporting. McDaniel, as you see here, 49.3%. Now, I want to talk to you about, just for a second, some of the votes coming in now are coming from Jackson, Mississippi. This should benefit the incumbent Thad Cochran to kind of counteract some of the strong turnout, high turnout for McDaniel in his home county. This is going to be close, but the Cochran people, we're told, looking at these numbers, are feeling increasingly confident, despite the fact that you're talking about 3,700 votes splitting the two. The other big race tonight, Sean, in Oklahoma, the quest to serve out the remaining term of retiring Republican Senator Tom Coburn has gone to Congressman James Lankford. He has handily defeated the former State House Speaker T.W. Shannon in a race that brought plenty of outside money and outside attention. Shannon had the support of the national Tea Party organizations. Lankford considered a rising star in national party politics and leadership. He became House Republican Policy Committee chairman because of his grasp of GOP issues. But this was a shocker in that it was decided early, and even the Lankford campaign was caught off guard, saying that they were going to come out a little bit later because they didn't think it was going to be this much this fast. He had to get over 50%, and he did.
Brett, let me ask you this question, because at the final days of this campaign, we know that Cochran was attacking McDaniel as a Tea Party conservative extremist, and the Daily Caller actually got a hold of a robocall that was courting Democratic voters to cross over and vote in this primary for Cochran. Let me play it for you.
Hello, neighbors. The time has come to make a stand and say no to the Tea Party, no to their obstruction, no to their disrespectful treatment of the first African-American president. Next Tuesday, June 24th, Tea Party candidate Chris McDaniel is in a runoff against Senator Thad Cochran. If we do nothing, Tea Party candidate Chris McDaniel wins and causes even more problems for President Obama. It pushes for damaging cuts in funding to our public education system. With your help, we can stop this. Please commit to voting against Tea Party candidate Chris McDaniel next Tuesday. Say no to the Tea Party.
Brett, explain how he was courting Democratic voters here, because Democratic voters that hadn't voted in the primary, in fact, the Democratic primary could cross over in this primary tonight.
Well, that's right, Sean. I mean, it is open. Democrats, independents, Republicans can vote tonight in this special runoff. The Democrats couldn't vote if they voted in the June 3rd primary. About 86,000 Democrats did that. So he was courting other Democrats. You know, the Republican who wins this race will likely win the Senate seat in November. That's just the way Mississippi has gone for a long time. So Cochran didn't make any bones about it. He was saying he was bringing the pork home. He was bringing the education money home for Mississippi, and they rolled out the machine. There's no doubt about it, not just the phone machine there, but the machine of politics under Haley Barbour. Senator John McCain went down there. You had the governor, Phil Bryant, do an ad for him. He even brought in Mississippi native Brett Favre for an ad, of course, the famous Green Bay Packer quarterback.
Is it too early, Brett, as we look now towards the general election in November, where most observers think this could be a very good year for Republicans, but the White House being under fire as they are with the IRS scandal and Lois Lerner and the VA and Iraq, obviously, and what's happening there? Are we seeing a pattern emerging that this might be insurmountable for Democrats come November, or is it too early to tell?
It's a little too early to tell, but Sean, you asked most people around Washington and most people who watch this very closely, they're leaning now to more 70-30, 80-20, that it goes to the Republicans for the Senate control come November. Just looking at the polls and the right track, wrong track. Someplace like Mississippi, whoever won tonight, they were going to win in Mississippi as the Republican there. Other places, these battles, these primary battles, could determine whether Democrats pull off a win. For example, in Colorado, where you have Cory Gardner and Mark Udall, that's going to be a race that everybody watches come November.
All right, Brett Baer, we'll be checking back with you later in the program as election results come in. Thank you so much for being with us. And joining us right now from the great state of Alaska, former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin. Governor, good to see you again.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, first of all, obviously very close in Mississippi. Too early to call right now, but in the final days of this campaign, Thad Cochran, I would argue out of desperation, really angered a lot of conservatives by reaching out to Democratic voters to push them over the hump here. With the margin being so close, 4,000 votes at this hour, that might have made the difference. Any impact in the general election?
Well, you know, as for the primary, and perhaps if it's true, some shenanigans going on there, nothing should surprise you, but that's that old school politics where it's a bit of the status quo and that's got to go. It's very rare in a Republican primary that the candidate who promises to bring home the bacon, promising bigger government, which is requiring higher taxes and more burdensome government, actually pulls it off in the primary. That's a rare thing, so it'll be surprising, and yet perhaps not, to find out with that crossover of Democrat voters how that does impact the general.
How do you interpret what happened with Eric Cantor? Nobody seemed to see it coming, and certainly nobody saw it in the margins that it ultimately came down. And what is your interpretation of that?
I think that it speaks for itself, that it is the constitutionalists, those who understand that the Constitution is the blueprint towards a more perfect union, and if politicians would follow it, our country would be better off. And included in that, kind of that principle of following the Constitution is adopting the free market, adopting any policy that would allow thriving of the American people, the entrepreneurial spirit to once again grow. Cantor wasn't representing that. He was representing the machine, the establishment that had been there too long and was part then of that status quo problem. And refreshing to see new energy get in there, and not necessarily new ideas, because these are time-tested truths that work for an economy and for security of a nation. And I think that, you know, we saw results that reflect that.
Governor, I've been making a distinction between conservative governors like Rick Perry, like Rick Scott, like Bobby Jindal, Nikki Haley, John Kasich, Scott Walker, and the success that they have had using conservative principles, and how they, in every case, have taken large deficits and turned them into surpluses, high unemployment, now lower unemployment by a pretty large degree. But I've not been inspired by Republicans in Washington. You went as far earlier this week and late last week to suggest that if the Republican Party doesn't get their act together, you would consider moving third party. Explain.
Well, if Republicans are going to act like Democrats, then what's the use in getting all gung-ho about getting more Republicans in there? We need people who understand the beauty of, the value of allowing the free market to thrive. Otherwise, our country is going to continue to be over-regulated, driving industry away, driving jobs away. We're going to be a bankrupt, fundamentally transformed country unless those who know what they're doing and aren't going along just to get along with those in power, it being today the Democrats, that does no good. So yeah, if Republicans aren't going to stand strong on the planks in our platform, then it does no good to get all enthused about them anymore.
I think there's got to be a vision. And you know what? I'm not looking for a complicated solution. Very simple. Don't spend more than you take in. Balance your budget. Energy is the answer. Look at North Dakota and look at Texas. That's an answer. In 4 years, we don't have a consensus plan on Obamacare. I think you got to give parents choice in education and control the borders. I don't think that's that complicated, Governor. But you don't hear a concise message coming from them. If you elect us, we'll do this. Go ahead.
Well, Ronald Reagan said there are no easy answers, But there are simple answers if we have the courage to do what is morally right. And we need candidates willing to serve those who are courageous enough to buck the status quo and do what is courageously right, and then to implement those pretty simple solutions that you just named. Other solutions. How long did they go without even having a budget?
Yeah.
You can't plan. You can't
Governor,
efficiently invest and have priorities at work if you don't have a budget, and that's what we lived with.
Governor, I just want the 50 million Americans in poverty to have the same shot in life that I had, and the 50 million on food stamps. One last final question. Hillary Clinton's book, you were brought up. She told the story that, in fact, the Obama campaign asked them in 2008 to attack you. Now David Plouffe is saying that Hillary Clinton's pretty much lying about being asked to make a sexist attack against you. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I've heard David Plouffe lie about other things, so I don't put a lot of stock in what he says. But no, the reference in that book, I think, was more evidence of this war on women. Certainly the first shot over the bow in my campaign, it was shot by Barack Obama and his ilk. No, they're the ones who want to essentially oppress women by keeping them dependent on big brother government to take care of all their needs. Part of the war on women, they started it.
Yeah. All right. Good to see you. Thank you, Governor Palin. And coming up on